Oh, hi! This week I feel very gross. I don't really know what's going on, so today's been a little slower paced. But I do have a side job to do, which is to take in some pants because the waist is too big. Now the waist measurement is the same as mine. It will also be nice that I can double check on myself that these do actually fit correctly. But this is something I do at my part-time job. It was something I never tackled before, being a uniform alteration specialist. But letting a waistline in or out has come to be fairly commonplace for me, and I feel like it'll be a pretty helpful thing to show y'all, so I'll walk you through it. There's really not that much involved, and there are limits to how much you can take it in or out, especially taking something out, because you only have so much to work with, and especially if the pants aren't made specifically to be let out, even less to work with. Before I show you how to take stuff in, which is the easier option, thankfully, I'm only really comfortable letting a pair of pants out if the butt seam, the back seam here, has extra seam allowance for it. Now, plenty of uniform pants do have this, and I see it more in dress pants. These are flame retardant utility pants, and it seems to be a kind of standard thing on these, but not all of the pairs that I'm working on. So what you do to let something out is you unpick the waistband, which we'll go through that whole process to take these in. That's all the same. You'll have the pants inside out, which let's just do that instead of me making you theorize what that would look like, since I gotta do it in a minute anyway. So here's the center chunky crotch bit where the leg seams meet, and it swings to the front. So this is the intersection right here. A little ways up, you're gonna stitch over the already existing stitching, and then you're gonna taper it out as much as you need to let this out. And again, there's not usually a ton of wiggle room, but you can get an extra 1.5 to 2 inches out of this particular pair of pants. That's usually workable for the situations I am put in, where if someone's reordering uniforms, generally they're just like, oh, well, last time I got this size, maybe they gained just a little bit of weight and no need to justify shit about it. But bodies change. You get older, it happens. But if it catches you off guard, 1.5 to 2 inches might be enough. Not to judge anyone that is outside of the 2-inch range, because that absolutely also happens within a year, but just as an example of when this happens at work. And it happens all of the time. Anyways, once you've tapered that seam out, you unpick up to the point that you stitched over down here. So you just have your new stitch line. You're gonna press that open. That's gonna help close up some of the holes with the steam. Oh, and then the waistband similarly has some extra meat here. So you just let that out in the same way. Like stitch your new line, go the same amount, unpick the old stitching. You're just gonna refold it and stitch it down. I'll show you how to reattach the waistband on the ones I'm gonna do, and reattaching the belt loops if that's intimidating. Don't worry, we're gonna go through the whole thing. But yeah, I thought it might be helpful to at least try to explain how to let them out without actually having a pair that I am actively letting out. I'm sure down the road I'm gonna have to let some of my own clothes out, so it'll happen at some point if that was too confusing. I am also fucking captain of the struggle bus today, so I'm sure there are extra discombobulated explanations. So let's see. I need to take these in to a 32. These are currently a 36-inch waist. This has flat felled seams, unlike this first pair where the seam allowance is just free to live its life and it's just plain hidden stitching on the outside. Where this, they took that seam allowance, folded it over on the inside, right in here, and then stitched it to one side. So it's much bulkier, but also super reinforced and probably a more durable seam this way. These are work pants after all. So there's gonna be a lot more unpicking, but that's the kind of straightforward part anyway. So first I'm gonna take the belt loop off. There's a thick bar tack at the top and down at the bottom here. Then for the waistband, there's an outside and an inside layer, and I'm gonna unpick both of those from that top of the actual pants. So I'm detaching it from the rest of the pants. Not all the way. I think I'm gonna go as far as each of the next belt loops either side, because we're gonna be taking this in a couple inches, so that's gonna narrow anyway. So yeah, lots of unpicking. Hopefully I got enough B-roll so that this voiceover part is showing you a little bit more intimately what it is that I'm doing, so that if my nonsense words aren't helpful, the visuals may be assisting you in figuring this out on your own. Okay, I had a tap out the other day, but we're back. Almost everything feels better, including brain and the rest of me. Just my shoulder pain is holding out, which I feel like is just a constant issue. I never don't hurt somewhere. I've had bad hips since I was 16, so it's just part of life. Anyway, I got the pants taken apart where I needed them to be. But before I show you how to reassemble them smaller, can we talk about how satisfying it is when you pull on a blind hem stitch or a chain stitch like this and it's just the whole thing in one go? Oh, it is the best. So remember how I was talking about the blue pair of pants and how it just has that regular ass seam on the ass, but this one had the like 3 rows of stitching and it was going to take forever. So to show rather than try to describe how this goes together, it's done like right sides together and then this is folded under and then stitch down, and it's like a really well reinforced seam. So I'm gonna do what I can to get close to this. Overwhelmed brain knee-jerk reaction is to just sew this right sides together, serge it, lay it all to one side, and then stitch up that. But is that really that much less work? I'm not sure. So I'm gonna go right sides together, get as far into this little crevice as I can, right at this center seam. And then this is where like the size adjustment is happening, right? So I'm gonna go along this whole edge. So I'm gonna start at the little crotch seam, start at the original stitch line, but then work my way out. And I need to take this pair in. Ooh, let me double check the tag I took off so I don't forget. Yes, I'm taking it 4 inches total. So I'm gonna taper this original seam line further into the pants until I'm in an additional 2 inches up this way. So from that original seam line, I wanna go in 2 more inches. I want it to be pretty straight once I'm within, you know, like 5 inches of the top here, because part of this is getting reinserted into the waistband and I wanna make sure everything's straight and I don't have any like angled seams trying to fit into a place where they had been straight before. So there's going to be some curving down the bottom, but then it's going to straighten out towards the top. So there's this like top section of the pants before the waistband, and there's obvious seams that should line up. So I'm going to pin those in place so those don't go walking around everywhere, because it'll be very obvious if they're off kilter. And that's close enough to the very top. I'm not going to add another pin there, but that would be another good spot to pin. You don't have to pin if you don't want to, but I want these to look as nice as possible. I feel like this will help in my attempt to not get any puckers or anything. So I'm going to sew this way, starting at the crotch. Okay, and then I'm going to take some chalk and then mark in 2 inches from there. I feel like that's a good spot. And then yeah, starting here, I'll taper it out, and this will be like my end goal once I'm around like this part of the pants. Here's the top. So yeah, down 5 or 6 inches. I want to be hitting that 2-inch mark. There's some pretty heavy duty thread that goes into these, as you probably saw in that chain stitch pull. Like it's a thick boy. I don't have anything as thick as that, but rather than like decorative quilting top stitching thread, I'm using this thicker thread. It's probably just showing up darker on screen because it's such a minimal difference, but I want to make it as strong as possible. I'll still be doing the 3, at least 2, if not 3 rows of the top stitching afterwards. And there's definitely like specific industrial machines that make these kinds of pants that are built specifically to do the thicker stitching. But I just got my little Husqvarna baby and it can only do so much. So let's give it a whirl, shall we? Also, I don't have a perfectly matching color anyway to go with these pants, and they're just gonna get covered in dirt and shit anyway, so it doesn't matter. And obviously this has been okayed with the person who these are going to, so they super do not care what these look like as long as they fit and are functional. Where typically when I'm doing a sewing job for someone, I get super particular about the thread matching color situation on whatever I'm sewing for them. So this is an anomaly. Please don't judge me for it. It literally doesn't matter to the person I'm sewing it for, and this is going to have more structural integrity, so we're going with this. So for the waistband, I just flipped the whole thing inside out, made sure all the flaps were open so it could lay flat. This is why I undid as much as I did on the top, is to make this part easier. So I folded it in half so I got a nice straight line, marked that out with some chalk, then I went over it with some small stitches with this thicker thread. I'm doing short straight stitches just to make this as durable as possible. Then I cut off the excess and it looks like this. So I'm gonna open this seam up because there wasn't a seam here before, remember? So there's gonna be like a little bit more bulk, but we're gonna work with it. I'm gonna fold that edge under on both sides. And obviously this is something I'll like be aware of, keeping all of this open when I'm stitching over it, but that should be the same width as the top of the pants now from where we took it in, because I used the same measurement. Lining up okay. Excellent. So before I reattach the waistband, I'm gonna attempt flat felling this seam. I've never actually done this before. I want the seam allowance of the pants to lay to this side over here. So I'm gonna trim that bottom side of the seam allowance just a bit. I don't know, a third of the way down, half the way down. I'm sure there's a standard for this. I probably should have left a little bit more than this, but it'll still be doable. So yeah, gonna fold the whole thing down, lay it flat. That'll give us a finished edge along the whole thing. It's going to be tedious and a pain in the ass to do, I'm sure, but we're finishing these goddamn pants today. I have 3 other pairs I have to do, and I need to get these done. So we're going to make it work, and they're going to be good, and it's going to be great. Okay, so not my finest work, but it is also my first time doing a flat-filled seam. And did I mention that these are just work pants that are going to get destroyed by my partner because, like, I don't have it in me to be a super perfectionist about this. I just need them to be as durable as I can make them. So I'm not going to stress. I'm not going to stress. We're just going to get these done and we're not going to stress. So there are a couple spots where I wasn't able to keep that top edge folded under. This is why I should have left a little bit more of a width there than I did. And now I know for the next pair. And when I go to do these for like a proper sewing job, I'll know better. But I did take my awl out, my little pointy stick guy. There's also a sewing tool called a stiletto that you can use in this situation, and it just helped me keep everything tucked under where I needed it to be. And I felt safer sticking that closer to the sewing action zone because it meant I wasn't going to drive a needle through my fucking finger. So yeah, this helped. I am going to do one more row of stitching just to super reinforce it. And it started out with 3. Why not have 3? I can fit another one right in the middle here. The back butt seam is fully restitched. Cool, cool, cool. Now we're going to attach the waistband. Oh, I think this is going to go really nicely. I love this part. So I'm just tucking the top of the pants up into the waistband. Now, obviously, like on the back, the belt loops are closer together. The pockets are closer together. All things to consider. And like why you can't take in a ton of length or width, whatever the measurement will be. You can only do so many inches. Otherwise, like pockets are going to be touching. It's just going to fit really wildly. So 4-inch alteration, not too bad. Obviously, the smaller, the less weird it's going to look. So I'm keeping that seam open, tucking that under, going on the other side, and just sandwiching that top section up into here. And, you know, there's an original seam line here. I can tell where the stitching used to be. I'm just going to go back over all of that. If you're scared of doing all these layers at once, you can take one of these folded up edges inside like this. Like take the waistband right sides together, go along here first, then fold that other edge like a bias tape and stitch that over if you don't want to fuck with anything else moving around up there. You can also like baste it if you're worried or just use lots of pins. Pins are good. Maybe I'm going to use some pins here. And then same thing, just small stitches, thick thread, reinforce it really well at the start and end. And while I'm doing that, stitching along the bottom edge, I'm also going to restitch this top bit here so that the waistband doesn't want to like crumple in on itself. It'll keep it nice and flat. Okay, advantage to sewing one side of the waistband right sides together first, then folding the whole thing over is you can avoid the issue I just had, which is that I didn't catch the underside all the way on the bottom of the waistband. So I did have to go back over it. So there are 2 lines of stitching. Again, doesn't matter for this pair, but just for future versions. And now, yes, I am going to reattach the belt loop up at the top, especially when you have to add a seam to the waistband like this. It's too much bulk for my machine to go through this folded down like that. So like at the end, the belt loop's going to sit like this, but I unfold the top one and stitch it like a 1/4 inch in, and then this can still flap down. All right, like that. And I'm going to fold this down, and I'll be stitching on a less bulky part because it's below the waistband, so it can handle this being folded over and top stitching across here. And now, I mean, dang, these aren't even for me, but they do fit really nicely, which is good. There's like a little wiggle room. I don't think these are meant to sit up as high on him, but like if these don't end up fitting him, I'm keeping these for myself. But yeah, I'm really proud of how this came out. Again, not the most pinpoint perfect, but like not too bad, especially first time flat filling seams. That's the only part I think went a little hinky, but it was just lack of practice, and this is me practicing. And this is the kind of shit I wouldn't be able to take time to do if it wasn't for y'all over on Patreon. So thank you so much for supporting me in a way that I get to do this every week. Abso-goddamn-lutely a dream come true. So yeah, wouldn't be able to do this without you. Again, I hope this was somewhat helpful. I am in a better headspace than I was the other day, but it's been kind of a weird week, and I don't know what that's about. Everything's in flux. We're working through things. Overall, a lot better than I used to be, so I'll take it. And on that note, I just remembered I have laundry in the dryer that's been there for a number of hours, so I'm gonna go finish the rest of my chores for the day. I'll see you back here with another video next Friday. Thank you so much for hanging out.